Hello and welcome back to The Prepared Mind. I really hope you enjoyed the rant on what is going on with Antifa here and these mass shootings. I really hope you enjoyed that. Before I start this video, I want to tell everybody how grateful I am that I have this channel, that I have, I guess, this face, this voice, even though I've been told I sound like Kermit the Frog. I don't get it, but I guess so. I'm really lucky to be in the position I'm in. I guess I'm lucky to have the experiences in life that have showed me how to look at all of this stuff and understand the world around me rather than being ignorant and confused. I feel like I've got a good handle on this, and this is why I'm willing to step in front of a camera or sit in front of a camera, share my thoughts on what is happening. I'm very, very fortunate, right, to have the capacity to not only see the information but understand it and draw parallels. And I want to thank you guys for sharing it all with me. Thank you very much. And I encourage you, of course, to share all of these videos with others so that they can understand and they can start to think. And if they're not there yet, they can open their eyes and begin to understand what you think about and why you talk about this and why this is important to you. Right? We do things for ourselves and then we do things for others. So you do things for yourself and you have the opportunity to help others by sharing. So this article is entitled, "France is Slowly Sinking into Chaos." Right? But this isn't a French problem. It's not an American problem. It's not a UK problem or a Germany. It's everywhere. The problem you and I face is a worldwide problem. Right? In Paris, on July 14th, right, they had Bastille Day. Right? At the end of the parade, a few dozen people released yellow balloons, right, and distributed yellow leaflets, which was the yellow vest, which is the protest against the government. The yellow vests are not dead. But a few hours later, thousands of young Arabs from the suburbs gathered near the Arc de Triomphe, and they had come to celebrate their victory of an Algerian soccer team. Storefronts were smashed, shops were looted, Algerian flags are everywhere, slogans are shouted out, "Long live Algeria, France is ours, and death to France." Signs bearing street names were replaced by signs bearing the name of Abd el-Qadar, the religious and military leader who fought against the French army at the time of colonization. Right? The police limit themselves to stemming the violence in the hope that it will not spread. Right? What is fascinating about this is the level of tolerance the government has for what is clearly seditious, what is clearly spreading a message of anarchy and lawlessness. But see, France isn't alone. By entitling this story, "France is slowly sinking into chaos," it should read, "America is, shrinking into chaos. The rest of the whole world is shrinking into chaos." It's important to understand that government is it's neither inept nor ignorant. It knows what it does. So what it does with intention and purpose. Right? So the article goes on to state, France today is a country adrift. Unrest and lawlessness continue to gain ground. Disorder has become a part of daily life. Polls show a large majority reject President Macron. They seem to hate his arrogance and be inclined not to forgive him. They have good cause. You see, the French people have good cause. Macron is a banker buddy. Macron puts down the French people who protest against their abusive laws and abusive taxation. They protest against the effects of globalist policies, and they protest against the silence and ineptitude of the French government that allows foreigners to come into their country, to loot, to destroy property, to deface their sign and put up essentially the socialist worship of enemies of the state. Here in America, we have the same problem. We have the deification of people like Che Guevara, who is a murderous thug. We have the deification of the state, but that state isn't our state, rather it's the USSR. It's communist China. They've deified and made bigger than life all of those dreams, and they run around saying it here in America, the same way they're doing it in France. But I'm drawing a parallel so that we can see what they're dealing with and understand that it's not going to get better. And we can see our future, and they can see their future by looking. Countries can look at each other and see where the future is in this. Macron is inept. He's not doing anything. He's allowing bad things. He's not doing any good things. He represents a group of people who have alternative interests, right? The French people, this is amazing. They love France. Imagine that. The French people love their culture. Imagine that. The French people love their traditions and their architecture. Imagine that. Their taste, their fine art, their love of life. Imagine a country that loves itself. There's great national pride in France. But the president that the people elected is the opposite. How is that possible? You have to ask yourself. I have to ask we all have to ask ourselves, how is it possible that the French who love France have a leader that hates France, that prefers multinational corporations and banking cartels over protecting the banking system of the people? A leader who tells them to be quiet and allows the out-of-control foreigners, because they're not French citizens, to shout death to France, to defile, deface, to assault, rape, pillage, and murder, just like in other European countries. And so we look at France and the EU and examine it. How can their leaders, who clearly are elected by people, right, a majority, the people want their country and they're being destroyed. Here in the United States, we love our country. But there is an un-American faction in the population, and there is an un-American faction in business and finance. And it's easy for me to see them when we all need to understand, yes, France is in big trouble, but so are we. The Yellow Vests seem finally to have stopped demonstrating and given up. Too many were maimed or hurt. Their discontent, however, is still there. It seems waiting to explode again. This is an interesting way to write about how frustration builds in the people. And then it erupts and they get kind of a cathartic release, right? The psychological release. They've vented like a volcano, builds pressure and explodes, and then it's quieter again. But the problem is the underlying pressure that's going to continue to rise. And by Macron using force to maim and hurt his own French people, who are French, who were born in France, who love France, who want their France to remain whole and intact, the leader is using the police and the military to hurt his own people. So that is like capping a volcano. They got some of their steam off, but now they're capped. They're being held back. The pressure is going to build again. The French police appear ferocious when dealing with peaceful protesters, but barely able to prevent groups such as Antifa from causing violence. Therefore, now at the end of each demonstration, Antifa shows up. The French police seem particularly cautious when having to deal with young Arabs and illegal immigrants. The police have been given orders. Of course they have. They know that young Arabs and illegal migrants could create large-scale riots. 3 months ago in Grenoble, the police were pursuing some young Arabs on a stolen motorcycle who were accused of theft. While fleeing, they had an accident. 5 days of mayhem began. So what the French are doing, a lot of people joke and say, is very French, right? They're surrendering to a hostile, violent force. And people who are peacefully protesting are the ones to be put down. It's very much a bully system. Whoever bullies the most gets to show the most violence and win. It is asinine to believe that the French police are not capable of putting migrants, both legal and illegal, in their place, literally making them understand the law. Now, the lawlessness that comes from these people, it scares the French, right? Their jails, do they have enough jails, right? Will the remaining unjailed migrants, will they riot? Will they free their friends in some sort of Arab Bastille Day and declare that the criminals that have been locked in jail for murder, rape, theft, assault, arson will be considered political prisoners? I don't know any Arab country that's run by Arabs where they allow their people to go out in the street, maim, murder, rape, steal, and commit arson and allow them to get away with it. Oh no. You see, they understand the sword, so they obey the sword. But when they're in Europe, they're not afraid of the sword because it's not shown to them. President Macron looks like an authoritarian leader when he faces the disgruntled poor. He never says he is sorry for those who have lost an eye or a hand or suffered irreparable brain damage from extreme police brutality. Instead, he asks the French Parliament to pass a law that almost completely abolishes the right to protest, the presumption of innocence, and that allows the arrest of anyone, anywhere, even without cause. That law was passed. Can we expect to see more of this type of behavior from domestic terrorists and the government here in the United States? It's a great question to ask. In Portland, they allow Antifa, the same Antifa that's in Europe. They're communists. They're violent communists. They've been indoctrinated and believe that socialism and social communism is the solution to the problem, when in fact they're being allowed to do what they're doing in order to create a government that is more totalitarian and has the excuse for it. They've passed a law to arrest anybody, anytime, over anything. It's passed in France. The government can beat the living shit out of anybody they want for any reason and arrest them. That law is now on the books. So what the government has done is taken the action of Antifa, created harsh laws, then apply that against the people, right? The French people. Here in America, we have Antifa getting out of hand. We have them committing acts of violence during protests and riots, murder, arson, and it's all being covered up. It's being covered up. If you don't think they're murdering people, you're out of your mind. Right? Unsolved murder. Someone's dead. Figure it out. How hard is it? Right? Guy's wearing a MAGA hat. Wonder why he died. But they're committing crimes, including mass shootings. And they've been doing mass shootings for years now. But they're now doing it intentionally. So Antifa commits a crime. The government's going to pass laws, then apply it against you and me, patriots, Americans, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. Right? Antifa is using guns. So they're going to come after the people, you and me, and say, you don't get to have guns. It's the same thing that's going on in France. The storyline is the same. The plot is the same. It's just they have different names for the characters. Right? I don't think that riots of migrants in this country would be tolerated to the extent that they are in Europe, in France. But we are seeing Antifa getting out of control and doing what they want en masse, as well as their individualized law breaking, which is being stopped, but is being allowed for what I consider to be political expediency. They know, the government, FBI, NSA, DHS, the national intelligence agencies, they know who Antifa is. They know who its members are. They know what they're planning. They know what they're going to do, and they should be able to stop them, but they're allowing this to continue. I'm hoping that they're directed to put an end to it. That's my hope, right? But it's important to note for me that while you pray for the best, you prepare for the worst. If France is allowing the bad behavior and the whole world is moving in the direction that we see it moving, it's right in front of our faces. From the corporate thievery and banking thievery to government ineptitude to the allowance of illegals, whether domestic or migrants, to misbehave. It has a calculated response and a calculated outcome, and it's international, it's everywhere. So it's hard to look at France and say, what a bunch of dumb French people, what a bunch of dumb Brits, what a bunch of dumb Germans, Swedes, right? How can they be so stupid when here in this country the very same things are happening? Not exact, but what is needed to get around the laws, the protections we have as people. Right? We're no longer fighting terrorism in other countries, right? The Cold War with the Soviets ended. Then we went to the war on terror. Now we're going to the war on ourselves, the war against our rights, because these people, these illegals and communists, whether they're Muslims or Central Americans or Europeans or Americans, if they're socialist and anti-American, they are at war with us. We're the peace lovers. The French people are peace loving. They are not sending their citizens to other countries, calling them migrants, political dissidents who are seeking asylum, and then trashing other countries. You don't see that from the French. They want to wear their berets, they want to drink wine, they want to have a baguette and have some cheese, some fromage, right? They want to relax, listen to accordion music, wear shirts with stripes on them, right? They're French. They don't need all this shit, so why is it happening? It's happening because it's being encouraged and allowed. Macron, right? Most Arabs and Africans live in no-go zones apart from the rest of the population where they accept the presence of non-Arabs and non-Africans less and less, right? That's their place. That's their hood. That's their turf. Like Portland belongs to Antifa. And there would be no conservatives allowed without a fight. Macron seems to not want to fight. Instead, he has chosen to appease them. Everyone knows, right, that appeasing Hitler worked real well. No, it didn't. Right? Appeasing the enemy by doing nothing, it just doesn't work. Macron is aware of the demographic data. How could he not be? They show that the Muslim population in France will grow significantly in the coming years. Yeah, they know. They know all of this stuff. Government is not ignorant. Macron has made no decision to remedy the disastrous economic situation in France. Right? Taxes, duties, social charges, and government spending remain at the same level now as when he came in. The debt to GDP ratio is 100% and growing. The French economy is not creating jobs. Poverty remains extremely high. And 14% of the French population earns less than 855 euros or $950 a month. That's incredible to think that you could live on $1,000 a month. You can't. Macron pays no attention to the growing cultural disaster also seizing the country. The educational system is crumbling. It's the same as over here. Our educational system is a babysitting indoctrination center for the youth while their minds are mush in their heads. And they're supposed to be forming intelligent thinking processes, absorbing relevant information, learning problem-solving skills, math. Instead, they're being taught how to masturbate and accept social parameters as being what other people define, and you can't choose for yourself. Right? It's disgusting what the educational system here in America has become. It's absolutely revolting. The main concern of Macron and the French government seems not to be the risk of riots, the public's discontent, the disappearance of Christianity, the disastrous economic situations, the Islamization and its consequences. Instead, it is climate change. Climate change, or human-induced climate change, appears to be Macron's absolute priority. In other words, he's putting his attention to where it's going to produce the least amount of results, where it's least needed. His attention is. We see that from many countries around the world. Now, in the case of the United States of America, President Trump was put into office, and he's not as worried about climate change as Macron is. He's trying to deal with some problems, right? There's a serious economic problems. We have serious political problems. We have serious corruption problems. He's putting some energy there. It would be nice to see him put more there. But there's a reason that he wants to do these things, and there's a reason he's not able to solve the problem. It's because of the opposition. If Trump was doing everything he was supposed to do according to the powers that be, he would be beloved. And our problems would be much greater here in the United States. But because he is fighting against these strange global powers, he is the most hated president by his opposition. They shout death threats, and they don't go to jail, right? They cause problems. Trump has a problem with the illegal immigrants, so he's going to do a roundup, and they disappear off the streets. I get reports that where there's normally massive amounts of illegal immigrants, they are hiding just from the mere threat or risk of getting in trouble for doing something they know they ought not. You see, when there's actually a consequence for breaking the law, people tend not to do it. Right, Hillary Clinton? Since there's no consequence for her, she continued for decades. All of these criminals in government, in the bureaucracy, in private business and finance that break the laws because there's no consequence, they kept doing it, and now we are in a state, a chronic state of downward spiral, of failure, and it's coming on us. See, Macron will remain president until 2022, right? Even though he's widely unpopular and wildly hated, he will probably use the same slogan that he used in 2017, right? The hope against chaos and fascism. Right? He has a strong chance of being reelected. It's incredible that they could hate him so much and love their country and continue to elect this guy. How is that possible? Chaos and fascism is what he has invited. The power of the state being used to profit corporations. Increase the power of the state and decrease the power of the people. France, like many countries, is ripe and becoming more ripe for revolution, for social unrest. Maybe they won't be fighting against each other, against the government in the streets of France, but fighting against each other. That is, the French people versus the immigrants. The government knows what it's doing, and it's allowing this. It's, in many ways, it is contributing to what is being done. Right? It's encouraging conflict. It's pitting its own people, the French, against a foreign enemy that's been introduced by the government itself. If you were the parent in your house and you had your own children, what kind of parent would you be if you invited in strange people alien to your household, and then encouraged them to fight with your own children? You're not a parent. You shouldn't be in charge in that house. You're a bad person. You're probably an evil person for doing that to your own house and your own kids. Yet that is exactly what our government is doing, the French government is doing, the British government is doing, the German government is doing. They're bringing alien thought and behavior into their own house and then sicking it and allowing it to attack their own children. It is a sickness. The West no longer knows what it is because it does not know and does not want to know what shaped it, what constituted it, what it was and what it is. This self-asphyxiation leads naturally to a decadence that opens the way to new barbaric civilizations. This is an incorrect statement. The West knows what it is. French, German, British, Spanish, whatever. The United States, Canada, we know what we are. Right? And he writes, because it does not know and does not want to know what shaped it. We know what shaped it. We know. You and I know. Maybe the ignorant idiots out here don't know and don't realize why this is all happening. But to me, it's simple to understand. The government has caused this intentionally. So that means that they want it to happen, which means they have an outcome that they're desiring, and this is how they're going to get there. It's the result of planning. Goals, agendas, planning, and execution. We're behind the curve, you and I, and the free world. We're behind the curve because we don't have the ability to take action. We're not allowed to stand up, take up arms, and go fix things ourselves because we, like the Yellow Vests or any other patriotic group, will be arrested. The government, in other words, is acting as its own enemy, or it's acting as the enemy of its own people, culture, laws, and rules. And an election every 2, 4, 6 years in the United States of America to remove those in office who are misbehaving or who are failing to act properly, it's not solving our problems. As a result, shit is going to hit the fan. Protests are going to become greater. Police power is going to become more abusive. Government is going to continue to pass laws that are unconstitutional. Flat out unconstitutional, illegal, against the rights of us, our constitutional rights, our God-given rights, our natural rights. That's what they're doing. And so you can expect there to be more pain and suffering because we're still going down. Hopefully someday we'll pull out of this and come up. For the time being, things are going down. We're getting closer to shit hitting the fan. So I suggest you get food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. I'm so sorry to see what's happening in France and Germany, England. It's disgusting. It's upsetting. Same thing is happening in our country. Right? Same thing is happening here. You have un-American, unpatriotic people that are representing, they're literally representing a segment of the population in government. And what are they doing? They're fighting. They're causing conflict. They're hurting our nation. They need to be stopped. They need to be stopped. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Go to thepreparedmind.club to get your preps. Share this video with others. Thumbs it up it, right? Thumbs up. Right? But sharing, subscribing and sharing and helping us over at Patreon goes a long, long, long ways. Your $2 goes a long ways at Patreon to paying for what it costs to keep the Prepared Mind Network up and going. And don't forget about the R Syndicate. Go over to the rsyndicate.com, take a peek around there, see what's going on. I'm not the only one, right? There's a lot of us free Americans, just like you, right, who want the world to be as it should, civilized and lawful, and not seeking war, not seeking the destruction of nations. But that's what we're dealing with, so get ready. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. I'll talk to you again soon. Semper Fi, Godspeed.